Our Savior, Jesus Christ, told us, if we do it to the least of these, we have done it unto Him. There are thousands of unsung heroes in the faith community making a huge impact. These are the people that are serving the least of these. Good afternoon, and welcome to our podcast, The Least of These. Jesus told us in Matthew 25 that if you have done it to the least of these, my brethren, you have done it unto me. The city of Kansas City, the metro area, has wonderful, wonderful people that are doing it to the least of these 24/7. And it's my honor to be able to interview those people so that you can get to know them better and understand what we do here in our city. Today, I'm very, very pleased to have Tammy Thomas, who is the Kansas State Director for Safe Families for Children. It's a very interesting, I'd never heard about this, so I'm really excited for her to tell you about it. Good afternoon, Tammy.
Good afternoon, Marilyn, and thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Tell us a little bit, how is Safe Families different? Because I know it's different than the foster care system and different things. So how is it different?
Absolutely. Number one, the children remain in the custody of their parents. The state does not have custody of these children. And we are about relationships. So many times families find themselves in a predicament that requires other people to come in. Mm-hmm. And it's more of a checklist of let's do this, let's do that, and we'll give them this, we'll give them that, and you should be good to go. But these are people most of the time that don't have resources. They many times come from generational situation, much like their own. They're just the next generation of living it. So it's transactional. It's not transactional. It's relational, and it's about walking day one, day two. If they're walking through a crisis, let's get through it. If they're looking at a crisis, let's address it. Or they may have just come out of one. Just like you and me, we could have something hit this afternoon, but we probably have a phone that's full of phone numbers we could call for help. Yeah. These people don't. The only phone number they may have was the last abusive situation they had, or maybe the last drug dealer that they did a deal with.
Okay. And how do you find them? How do you find, because I know I've called you a couple times, and when you called me back, you said I was placing a baby.
Right,
okay.
Absolutely.
So tell me, how do you find these children?
Many times it can be a hospital. I think the one that I talked with you about one time, it was Children's Mercy Hospital.
Yes.
Had called us.
Yes.
And it was a mom that had a newborn. The baby tested positive for drug exposure, and Mom had already lost 3 children to the system, the foster care system, and they were adopted out. This mom didn't get help for her drug addiction, but she wanted to keep her child. So the social workers at the hospital sent the baby to Children's Mercy. Children's Mercy had heard about Safe Families and said, you know what, let's try. Let's see what we can do. We located a mom to care for this newborn while Bio Mom went into a rehab situation. Okay. The mom, she fell on the wagon, off the wagon. Then she was MIA for a few days. But we had a social worker, and we also had a volunteer that were determined to support this mom to get to have and retain full custody of her child. And it's funny because we just talked about this mom earlier today. This mom is now living independently. She's 3 years clean, and she still has her little boy, has never lost custody. She is putting that child first, and that's what she wanted to do, and that is exactly what she's doing.
She wanted to do it, but she didn't know how.
Exactly. Yep. She felt alone.
Yeah.
She didn't have resources.
Yeah. So do you go and talk with the hospitals?
Sure.
How do the hospitals find out about you?
We had found out. We had talked with them, with Children's Mercy. We have talked with Advent Health. We're talking with a hospital in Topeka, down in Wichita, southeast Kansas, because people come in, have children, and they don't know what to do. Yeah. Or sometimes it's a situation where we don't want to call the hotline of DCF and report this, but they're going to need some help. And so they'll give our materials to a family, or that they may just say, hey, I'm going to have this mom call you so that you guys are familiar. And one stark difference, we don't intrude on the family.
Okay.
The family has to call us. That means they have a willingness and a drive to change.
Yes.
To ask for that help.
They're asking for help. Well, I think that's wonderful. I know that you have a background in medicine. How did you get started in this?
Okay. I've always had a servant's heart. I've always wanted to care for those that may have been having a hard time. And so I was in nuclear medicine right out of school. My husband had an opportunity for a job in Dallas, Texas. And so we moved to Dallas for 7 years, had 1 child when we got there and 3 when we got back. And so we're both from Kansas City. We met in Kansas City, and he wanted to be back. I wanted to be back. So we had our 3 children, and we just kind of paused, and we decided, you know what, I as a mom can jumpstart a career. But I can never, ever re-raise my children.
That's correct.
So
That's right.
I stayed home for 14 years, and then those little babies started getting into college, and the bills started rolling in, and I thought, boy, I better get a job. So I went to the Department for Children and Families. I was contacted by an individual, and they said, we just want to talk to you. And I said, well, I don't have any history or background in child welfare at all.
Yeah.
They said, that's okay. That's all right. We want you to take on long-term care liaison, when elder folks were going to be going into long-term care facilities.
Yes.
So I did, and addressed some of the challenges that were in there. And one day I was called to Topeka to meet with the secretary, and I was scared to death. I'm like, oh no, somebody has said something. And actually, she just wanted me, asked if I would take on the role of a regional director for the Kansas City region of DCF. And with much thought and prayer, I did. And it was probably one of the best things I've ever done, and one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever done. And I found that in my tenure, I spent most of my time with the child welfare side. I had some with the adult protection side, and then, of course, EES, Economic and Employment Services, those types of things. But the vast majority of my time was spent with child welfare. Then as we live our life in the U.S. as we do, and an election comes along, other folks come in and out of office. And so I moved on, and I was contacted by Dave Anderson, the CEO and founder of Safe Families, because he had already been to Kansas and presented to me as a regional director and asked if I would come on board with Safe Families.
Okay.
And so that's how I got here.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. And how long ago was that?
That was in 2019.
Okay, that was a tough year.
Yep, that was a tough year.
Was a tough year to start.
We started in 19 in Missouri.
Okay.
And so then there was a change that was needed in Kansas, and so he moved me over to the Kansas side February 24th of 2020.
Oh, wow.
February 24th is my birthday. And so February 24th, 2020, I became the state director, and part of getting out in the community is talking with churches and going in and presenting. Well, then on March 8th, churches closed.
Yeah.
And were closed for a long time. So we had to figure out, how do we take these steps and continue without being able to meet with churches in person?
Yeah.
And so that was a bit of a challenge.
I can understand that. Now, you're a little bit different, as I understand, in that you are a nonprofit,
Yes,
as
we
I
are.
understand, but you also you are associated with the state of Kansas.
Yes.
So explain to me how that works.
I currently right now have a state grant from the state of Kansas. I went through the legislature and presented the story of Safe Families and what we can do. And when you really think about what we're doing, we're serving children. Can we keep kids out of the system? That's our goal.
Yes.
Because once they go in, there's some happy stories, but there's a lot of unhappy ones.
Yes.
And so if we can keep kids away from the river of childcare, up on the bank, and serve and intervene prior to state involvement, that's going to be a better solution. And even fiscally, some folks don't want to hear about, we go into churches and share what we do and ask for volunteers to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to help. I want to do that. I have a heart for that. And fiscally, it's much cheaper for Safe Families to be in place. And for those folks that don't care to have
Interesting.
church involved. So
Yes.
with Safe Families, it costs about $600 a month. If we were to annualize that out, it'd be about $7,200 a year.
Yeah.
But I also want to say our average length of stay is 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
And
Okay,
so
that's good to know. Yeah.
if you annualize the cost of just paid staff, not the volunteer, but just paid staff, and what it takes, it comes out to about $600, so $7,200 a year for one child with Safe Families. If you look on the foster care side, one child in the state of Kansas child welfare system is anywhere from $28,000 to $36,000, and
Isn't that something?
and it's a barrage of reasons why.
Yeah. Yes.
But if you can keep government out of the picture, not only is it better for the taxpayers, because
Yes.
their money isn't being spent there, but it keeps a child at home. It keeps that parent engaged with their child,
Yes.
and it gives value to that relationship.
Okay. Now, do you, when you place a child, like you were talking about the baby that went back
Yeah.
with its mother, do you follow up on that?
Absolutely.
Do you?
That's how I
So-
know we're three
I was
years
just-
clean.
That's what I wondered.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that our audience understood that you follow up with that. So even the $600 a month includes the follow up
Oh yeah.
for the children.
We
That's
didn't
incredible.
even put
That's
a
incredible.
number to that. The young lady I told you about, we talked with her today because she's needing a family friending. She's in a situation in Topeka, in this area where her apartment is. It's dangerous. There's been
Okay.
2 shootings within the apartment area. And so she knows of an apartment that she's eligible to be in, and it's near her job, which is also near her son's daycare. And so we want to help her make
Oh,
that shift.
yes.
And there were some stumbling blocks, and so we helped out with that.
Okay.
And she's made the call today to say, hey, I'm ready to move over.
And she has a job. I
Yes.
heard you say she has a job.
Yeah, she sure does.
I just think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I really do. And I know that you have more than one, but I hope that you're getting the word out. I hope that the states
Yeah.
are realizing what's going on, because I'm not sure I have ever talked to anyone that did not talk about how our foster care system is broken.
Yep. Well, and it's in a place where it shouldn't be. It's the gap should be filled by the church. We should be the hands and feet of Christ and caring for these children and supporting these moms. You'll never have safe kids if you don't have safe parents. Child welfare tends to focus on the child, not the parent.
Yeah.
And
I can
so
see that.
we want to focus, and we do focus on not only the child, keeping that child engaged with their parent, safe, but we also engage that parent and wrap around them. Right today, we've had, this week, we've had a mother of 4 kids. 2 have been served here, 2 are in the southeast Kansas area, and getting her a job, getting her a volunteer to step up and help get clothing. So she's got nice clothes to wear to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Letting them know some value and help them understand what they are instead of always what they're not.
Oh, I think that's beautiful. I really do. And I'm in total agreement with you. Let me ask you about the churches. All right. What have you found? Have you found that they welcome you? Have you found that they step up?
I tell you what, we're in a very different environment than we were pre-COVID, because the church, just like we had to learn how to do Safe Families differently, the church is learning how to minister differently. Those that were in the seats on Sunday mornings prior to COVID are now staying at home and watching it
That's
online.
right.
And so
right.
it's just a different environment. But, my mom has always said, when Christ is the center of something, it's going to be successful. And so that's what
beautiful.
That's what
That's
I keep
beautiful.
thinking about.
Yes, that's a good thing to think about.
And so we get in there, and it has been difficult. And so many times you talk about it keeping a child in your home. Well, that's not the only thing Safe Families does. And in fact, if we can keep a child at their own home and family friend that mom or dad or grandma or whoever it is, to keep that child safe to keep them in school or fed or whatever the need may be by a family friend being available, calling, checking, just like we have friends. I could get my phone out of my purse and
absolutely
call 15, 20 people
Yes.
quick if I needed someone.
Yes, that's right.
We want to have a friend that person can call that wasn't the last person that harmed them.
Yeah. Yes, and when you stop and think about that, if any of us thought about, I don't have anybody to call. I know that when you talk about the calling the last person that abused them or whatever, that's all they know to do.
Yeah.
And they don't know anything else to do, and they don't have anyone else. Well, I certainly think that this is an incredible ministry that you have. How are you able to go and talk to, I'll just go back to hospitals, because I know I've learned that hospitals run on a very, very tight financial margin. And I know that, or would think that you meeting with nurses or people takes time. And have you had any pushback, or is there any way that you've found that works good to get into hospitals?
Just being diligent. Don't take no as the only answer, or we're busy. If it's in 3 months, we're going to be calling in 3 months. We'll probably call it 2 months from now and set it up for the next month. Just that due diligence. But actually, social workers that we meet with, they welcome the help. They welcome, we've got somebody here. This is a young couple. She's 18 and he's 19, and they're walking out with twins. Oh my goodness. Do you think it's set up for success?
No.
Okay. So,
No.
well, of course they'll say, you can call us back at any time, the nursery.
Yeah, right.
But how can we engage them before the problem hits? And so giving the hospital our information is helpful. And they will call us and say, hey, we may have a mom. We've given them your number, or a dad, or a couple, and they may be calling you. They've got twins. He works nights. There's nobody else. It's just a recipe that's not going to cook up to something good.
That's true. That's
Right.
true. Well, because we both know raising children, I can think back my first baby, and there were times when I didn't know what to do. I found out he had a milk allergy when he was about 3 months old, but we went through a time when he cried all the time.
Yeah.
And I did not know. And I remember, I know how frustrating I got. It was like, but I could call my mother.
Yep. Absolutely right.
And my mother would say, we'll go do this or go do that. Get out your hot water bottle. Get out your, whatever that you could do.
Right.
But I can't imagine not having anyone to call.
It's inconceivable to me.
Yes, it is.
And I know, I was second oldest of 5 kids, and we were probably in the lower socioeconomic category when I was growing up. But I had a mom and I had a dad.
Yep.
I
And you
can't
probably had
imagine
grandparents.
Yes. I can't imagine taking one of them out of the picture. And so not having anything like that, which we're seeing more and more, is really, really concerning. And in fact, I just had a conversation with a woman on Sunday evening. I'm 61. She's older than I am. And her son is in his 50s. And her son has 2 small kids.
Oh, wow.
And we were talking about some of the challenges that is coming about. And she goes, but Tammy, she goes, when I came home from school as a little girl, and if my mom's bedroom door was shut, I didn't know what man was behind there. So if you count that up, that's 4 generations of confusion and turmoil, really.
Yes.
And if we can, kids come in to foster care one family at a time. Maybe it's one child, maybe it's 4, but they come one at a time. And we've got to act and support these families because we've got to help them one at a time.
Yes.
And that's the job of the church. And we can go in and people say, oh, I can't watch a kid. There's no way, I'm older. Okay. Well, could you be a resource friend?
Yeah.
If this mom has a car and she needs 4 tires, is there any way you could pay for it?
Yes.
Others say, oh, I just don't have time for that. Well, God gave you the time that you're using right now.
That's correct. I always said we all have the same amount of time. It's how we choose to use it.
That's exactly right.
And what was it I read the other day? Something about life was not short if you used every day of it.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I thought, that's really cool. That's really a really good thing to say. What else? I see that you have some things you want to share with us. So please share whatever you would like to share.
I want to say this, that anyone can make a difference. I have an older lady who's a volunteer, and is she going to watch a 9-month-old? No. But you know what? Recently she has hosted for us for some of these kids that are 8 or 9, 10 years old. And it's almost like a grandmother figure that these kids don't have.
Yeah.
And she has made such an impact on these children. Now, there's children we wouldn't place there because it would be more than she would handle, and probably the child would take advantage of. Yeah. And so we always have to be mindful of that. But then you have a young couple. Oh, we don't have any kids yet. Sure, you can engage in this. You're probably a sister or a niece or whatever. But people will never make a difference if the people don't stand up and show up.
Yes.
They've got to show up. And we've got all kinds of excuses, but our kids are watching. Our kids watch, my kids watch me.
Oh, yes.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
And so what kind of a legacy are we who can make a difference making? And if we don't even show up, it's one that I'm not proud of.
Yeah.
But we want to be about that relationship, not that transaction.
Yes. Well, and I go back and I think about what you're talking about, and it spreads into everything. It spreads into human trafficking.
Yep.
When those kids, they, and anymore, my gosh, a 7-year-old child can be trafficked.
Yes.
Most people don't realize, they don't really understand that could happen to a 7-year-old child.
Absolutely.
And if there's no one there, and I know that at times the courts have given children back to the parents, but if that parent hasn't had what you call a friend, what's changed? What's going to be? I mean, the boyfriend's going to come back over. He's going to abuse her again.
Or a new boyfriend.
Or a new boyfriend. That's right. Or if she hasn't kicked the addiction.
Yeah.
I mean, children are, what it is, I think 87% of the children that are trafficked are sold by either a relative or someone like a boyfriend.
Sure.
Excuse me.
Yeah. And you figure if you look at the children that we have hosted for the state of Kansas, 57% of them are boys.
Wow.
And when they go back home, less than 10% of them have a male figure in the home. And so it makes them very, very vulnerable.
Yes.
Because they're growing without a significant foundation of what is a man.
Yes. My husband and I were at a meeting last night, a group that we've been meeting with, and there were 3 boys there. I would guess they were probably 18, 19. All 3 spoke because they had gotten a job that day. And the one young man, I should say boys, one young man who spoke, he said that his father died before he was born, and his mother died when he was 13. Oh, gosh. And he had basically lived on the streets. He had no place to go. He had nobody until the church where we were.
Yep.
The pastor of the church found him and started treating him like he was his father. And that guy, he stood up there and he thanked the pastor and said, if it had not been for him, he said, I would be in jail now.
Yeah, absolutely right.
He stole because he didn't have any other way to get anything. And he had no one that would go to bat for him.
Yeah. We have a gentleman that is on our staff part-time here in Kansas City, and he's a minister, a full-time minister at a church here in Johnson County, and he was in and out of the foster care system. He and his sister, his mom would be in rehab. She would be in jail. This, that, and the other, and they would bounce from home to home or go into foster care for a period of time, and his story in coming to us is one that his mom cared enough to always get them in a church no matter where they moved to. And he said what makes Safe Families attractive to him is his church was doing Safe Families without a title of Safe Families. He said he can count a dozen families that he stayed with when mom went MIA.
Yeah.
And he says he would be in a different place today had it not have been for that church and those families that took him in.
Oh, I'm sure that's true.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I thought when I first met you and learned about Safe Families, I felt like it was one of the best kept secrets I had seen. So tell me how people can learn more about Safe Families.
Okay, well, Safe Families, let me reach over here and get my
Sure.
brochure. In Kansas, we're a little bit different. We're located in Kansas City, southeast Kansas, which is an entire region, the Wichita region, and we're building the central part of the state as well. And what we're learning right now, there's not a secret sauce. It's just being responsive. So hopefully on this opportunity, we have somebody hear this, and they say, "Gosh, we don't have that here. I want to have that here." Well, you can call us at 913-933-3357. That line is open 8 to 8, Monday to Monday, 7 days a week.
7 days a week. Okay.
And you're going to get a live person on the other end of the phone, and we can have a meeting. We're getting ready to go to Chapman, Kansas. Somebody heard about us out there, so we're getting ready to go there. We have way out in Scott City, Kansas.
Which I have no idea where that is.
It's just north of Garden City. You're
okay.
pretty close to the Colorado line.
I thought you must be. Yeah.
But out there, it's a group of women that have heard about Safe Families, and through their church, they're putting this together. And we said, because it's a volunteer base, it's grassroots.
Sure.
So if you have a group of 5 or 6 families that are willing to really embrace this, then we're going to come out, prepare you, and also provide through you, help find somebody that is a paid professional to kind of be a chapter director, to actually take responsibility from an administrative side.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah. Yep. It'd be wonderful.
Just be wonderful.
And so it's all about, it sounds nice, but like I said earlier, you have to show up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and yes, it does. I mean, and it is. It's warm and wonderful. But it's also humans.
Yep.
I mean, those babies are going to cry.
Yep.
They're going to need their diaper changed.
Yeah.
Just like our kids, just like our kids. And I've also learned so much. And of course, I think that when we were mothers, I don't think anybody did anybody ever teach you how to be a mother? No. Didn't you just kind of know? I mean, you made your mistakes, but you knew basically when a baby needed to be changed. So many things about when a baby was hungry.
Upset stomach.
I know, yes. Well, or I know just our little granddaughter last weekend, when she just got so tired that nothing pleased her. She would cry, and her mom just took her and held her on her lap, and before we knew it, she was sound asleep.
Yep.
And that was what she needed.
That's right.
And I think we just had that, I don't know, innately.
Yep.
But I don't think that's so true anymore.
Yeah.
I think I'm not quite sure why that is, that it's more difficult.
I think it's more difficult, and I also feel like we live in a society that if you're stumped on what to do, you better go see somebody. And then you end up with diagnosis, and you've got all of these things bombarding you when you just had a child growing. And as a mom, you needed to figure it out, and a dad, or dad figures out mom's about at her wit's end, so I better step up.
Yes, yes. I was even known to say, here, it's your turn now. I've been with them all day long. It's your turn.
Yeah.
But I need a break.
But when you have moms that didn't have a mom, or grew up in the system and aged out and found herself in some trouble, we're just raising a generation that has become far too dependent on government and people to tell you what's wrong with you, when really what you need is a solid relationship. We're built that way.
Yes, that's the way God made us.
Yeah.
He made us to have a relationship.
Yep.
He made us so different. The other day I was thinking, I was just looking out my window in my house, and the birds are kind of starting to come back now, and I was thinking how different God made us than he made the animals and the birds.
Gosh, yes.
And we have 2 deer, which I'm not quite sure I'm so thrilled about because they ate my plants last summer. But you just think about how different God made us.
Mm-hmm.
And he made us because he wanted a relationship.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think that's why he's put up with us for forever.
I was a test pilot.
Oh, I had to have been too. I'm surprised they didn't leave me on the street corner somewhere. But no. Well, and when we were growing up, if there was a situations where there was a baby in the family, one of the family members stepped up.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's been we had it in our family
Mm-hmm.
where the grandparents stepped up and raised a grandson.
Yep. I've had it in my extended family for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've all had those types of things happen. So it just makes so much sense that you go back to you just need a friend.
Yep. And it's not people that we support and that we become involved in. It's not always a socioeconomic level that you're at that you can't overcome. I can think of a case that I was directly involved in, and this woman, she lived in the finest neighborhood you can imagine, drove the finest car that I would only look at and not get near because I could mess it up. But her kids went to the best school and the premier teams, but she had no one. She was socially isolated. She wasn't homeless,
No, but she might as well have been.
Yeah, her home was not good.
No,
and so we walked with her for quite some time, and she couldn't talk to anybody in the neighborhood. She couldn't talk to her mom.
No,
couldn't
because
talk
of
to
the
school
because of the peer pressure.
Exactly right.
She was supposed to know it.
Right.
Because of where she lived.
Absolutely. And her husband she described him as on eggshells all the time. Being around him was like being on eggshells. And the kids and she called Safe Families. Well, no, actually she called me, my work line, which isn't published. And I don't know how she got it, but she called me. It was a Saturday night before Mother's Day a couple years ago at 10:30 at night. And I picked up and I was like, this is strange. I said, this is Tammy of Safe Families. And she goes, can you help me? And I mean, her quivering voice, and long story short, an hour and a half later, I decided, okay, she was better. And she was at a PRTF with her 2 sons. And I said, are you picking up a child there or are you taking children? She goes, I don't know what I'm doing. And so an hour and a half later, after our conversation, we set a date to meet on Tuesday and have coffee together. But she had to have a no judgment zone friend.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been.
She did. And I was just, I don't know if I was reading about this or thinking about this the other day, but just exactly, I think I was reading about it. It was your real friends are the ones that are totally non-judgmental of you.
Right.
And you can pretty much, you can tell them anything.
Sure.
And those friends are pretty rare.
Yeah, few and far between.
We grew up, we're social. In fact, I think you and I are very social. Okay?
It's true.
When we meet, we can't quit talking.
Yep.
But we're social, and we had friendships, but you think about how few people, and if we have few people, and we're around people all the time, then think about someone who's not around people, or who's so quiet or shy, or like you said, made some poor choices.
Yep.
That
pretty isolating.
It's very isolating.
Yeah.
I know there are some other groups around town which I'm going to be interviewing that work a lot with single moms.
Yep.
And I just think that's so great.
Yeah.
Because that is such a challenging place.
Right.
I can't imagine it.
We with Safe Families, we talk with our community partners, cities. We talk with police departments. We talk with schools, daycares, all of those kinds. If you have a child, the children that are there, we want to be a resource. And maybe it's just our brochures on their counter.
Right.
Mom doesn't have to make a big thing of it. And we try to make it all encompassing.
Yeah.
And it's just safe families for children. Yeah. And so, but if someone picks that up and gives us a call, they're going to, if it's after 8, may not get it that day. But I have a dedicated team of people who many times
I know you do.
They just pick it up anyway, even though they're not getting call money for it.
Well, and like I said when we started, I know how dedicated you are because of how many times I've called or you've called and said, "Hey, I can't make it. I've got to go pick up a baby."
Yep, absolutely.
And I know you do that.
Yep.
And I also know that your team, they see you, and they're modeling. They're modeling after you. Why don't you give the number again?
Okay.
And let's and maybe their your website address.
Yeah.
Okay. Just so people will know again how to get in touch with you.
Sure. Our intake line, like I said, is 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And that number, if you just want information, or if you hear this and you need help, or you know of somebody that would need help, or you say, "Hey, I want to be a host family or a family friend or a resource," just give us a call. 913-933-3357. Let me say that one more time.
Yes.
913-933-3357. Or you can contact us, the Kansas Safe Families, and the email address is kansas@safefamilies.net. And that goes into a pool. I get the email as well as my administrative person and my intake person.
Okay.
And so all three of us get that.
So if I call you or if I email you, I know I'm going to have a person to talk to.
No question. Yep.
And that's huge today.
Absolutely.
That is so huge. We could do another hour about that.
Yep. And we have, I was questioned one time, we go into churches to seek out volunteers and that type of thing. And the question to me, and it was by a legislator, said, "Well, do you have to go to church to be a part of Safe Families?" And I said, "No, you don't." I said, "Good. You have a passion to support a family." I said, "However, we do have circles of support that want to support. If you're hosting a child, we want to support you."
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you let a circle of support from a church, bring you dinners every Thursday night while you are hosting a child? Would you let them help you transport to, if they're on a ball team, would you let them take them to ball team practice or something like that?
See, that's great. That is just because it gives you a break.
Yeah.
It gives you a break.
One other unique question that was posed to me is, in our world today, we have a lot of different perspectives and things that children are exposed to. And,
yes, we do.
At Safe Families, it's not our role to try to transform them into something else. It's our role to greet children, greet families with where they are, and serve them, support them, encourage them to the point that they feel like they're on stable ground, and families reunite. So it's not some radical thing. We're just there to meet people where they are.
Yeah. Well, and I think in closing, if we go back and talk, isn't that what Jesus did?
Absolutely.
Jesus met people where they were.
Right.
And there's all kinds of examples in the Bible where he did that. So I really believe, and I want to thank you for coming on today. And I truly believe that Safe Families, you're following the Word of God, and you're taking care of the least of these. And I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you for the opportunity to share, Marilyn.
You're welcome. I hope that you've enjoyed our presentation today and learned more. And if you know of someone that could use Tammy's help, could use Safe Families' help, I hope you will have them reach out to her. She's truly one of the kindest, most giving people I believe I've ever known. If you've enjoyed our podcast, I would ask that you would go on to our YouTube channel and that you would subscribe. Or if you want to check out and learn more about me or about what we do, it's at MarilynWArnold.com. Thanks a lot, and I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed doing it. Thank you.